On May the 5th, across Scotland, Wales and many parts of England, people are going to the polls to vote in local elections, while Northern Ireland will also choose who sits in the Stormont Assembly. As the results come through, BBC News will bring you coverage throughout the night, reporting and analysing the outcome of your votes. Elections 2022.
Thursday night from 11:40 on BBC One, and continuing Friday and across the weekend on BBC News.
Profits have doubled for the first 3 months of this year to almost £5 billion, even more than expected. But as their profits rise, so too do prices and energy bills for millions of people, piling on the pressure on the government to do more to help.
I'm not going to pretend that every family is going to have a magic solution from the government overnight. I simply can't pretend that we can do that, but we can be as ingenious and as compassionate as possible.
Also on the programme tonight, rescued at last after more than 60 days trapped underground in Ukraine. More than 100 people who've been living under the besieged steel plant in Mariupol finally reach safety. Millions of women in the US could lose the right to an abortion. Leaked documents show the current law may be overturned. As people across the UK prepare to go to the polls on Thursday, a special report from Northern Ireland where the results could bring seismic change.
And I'm in Spain, where Liverpool are chasing sporting immortality, starting with their Champions League semi-final second leg against Villarreal.
And coming up on the BBC News channel, England's new Test cricket captain Ben Stokes talks about his plans on the field and his history off it.
Good evening and welcome to the BBC News at 6 tonight, live from Belfast. The Prime Minister has hinted he may be prepared to do more to address the rising cost of living, but he has dismissed fresh calls for a windfall tax on energy companies. It comes as BP announced it made almost £5 billion in underlying profits for the first quarter of the year, more than double the figure for the same period last year. Rising prices and energy bills are expected to be a big issue in the elections across the UK this week, including here in Northern Ireland, where the outcome of the vote could have seismic consequences for the UK. We'll have more on that later. But first, here's our business editor, Simon Jack.
BP has driven straight into the middle of a political and economic storm. As the soaring cost of fuel and energy has emptied the pockets of consumers, it has filled the coffers of those that sell it. BP recorded its highest operating profits in a decade, adding fuel to a political fire on whether to impose a windfall tax to fund more help for the many people the BBC has met who are struggling.
I've had to determine whether it's energy or food I'm picking, so that's why I've had to seek help, because you can't just pick one or the other, you need to heat your home.
I used to love going to the beach, but I can't even afford that in fuel now, so because I have got a car to run as well. So we just do little things like this now. Sometimes we'll even get bus, won't we, instead.
The Prime Minister said today more help was coming, but taxing companies making important investments was not the answer.
What do you achieve if you simply take that money away in tax? Do you actually deter them from making the big changes that we need in our energy market? Because we really do. We need investment in supply. That's the big problem we've got.
The prices we are seeing are driven by global supply and demand factors, including, of course, the war in Ukraine. In the first 3 months of this year alone, BP has made nearly £5 billion, more than double the amount they made in the same period last year, as the price of oil and gas has rocketed. Meanwhile, they promise to invest £18 billion by the end of 2030 in the UK, mainly in renewables and low carbon technology, but some in oil and gas to keep the UK's energy supply secure. They also think they will pay around £1 billion in tax on their UK operations. They paid none in the last 5 years as prices were low and their costs were high. Now, the government largely welcomes this tax revenue and this investment plan and says that windfall taxes might deter that kind of investment. But opposition parties disagree, saying windfall taxes are essential to help fund extra help for those struggling with the cost of living crisis.
We should have a windfall tax on oil and gas companies in the North Sea who have made more profit than they were expecting, have a windfall tax on that and use that to help people with their energy bills, up to £600 for those who need it most.
Liberal Democrats are arguing for a VAT tax cut worth £600 to the average family. And one of the ways we'd fund that is through a windfall tax on the oil and gas companies.
This is at a time when the oil and gas companies are making obscene profits. So we need to be taxing those profits and putting that money into supporting people with financial help right now.
We need to make sure that the government is taxing not just BP, but other companies that are making excess profits, and that those proceeds should be reinvested back into making sure that those that are suffering from the cost of living crisis get some help.
BP has written off a £19 billion stake in Russian oil giant Rosneft, but it still intends to increase payouts to shareholders, which include millions of UK pension savers. The argument over how and how much to tax the energy giants will continue this week, as rival Shell is expected to announce even bigger profits on Thursday. Simon Jack, BBC News.
Let's talk to our political correspondent Chris Mason, who is in Westminster. And let's talk about the cost of living, Chris. How much is it expected to dominate not just this week at the elections, the local elections, but also over the next few months, the political discourse?
Yeah, hello to you, Sophie. This cost of living crunch will shape and define domestic politics this week ahead of the elections, but in the coming months and years in the countdown to the next general election too. The statistics we know are grim. You don't need me to tell you that. You can see it when you're queuing it for the till at the supermarket, when you're queuing to pay for petrol at the pumps. And the context here is the precedent of the pandemic, where the government splurged so much money you could see it from space. And it means the opposition parties can say now, well, look what you did a couple of years ago, and what you're doing now is pathetic, inadequate in comparison. But the government frets that it can't do everything. The Prime Minister saying as much in the last hour or so in a wide range of BBC interviews that he's been conducting with local radio and regional telly. There is a concern from the government that they're already spending £80 billion a year on interest payments on our national debt, and therefore there is a limit on what they can do. The truth is, whatever any government chose to do, given the scale of this crunch, it would probably be seen by many not to be enough. The coming challenge for all of our political parties in the next couple of years is trying to come up with a convincing answer to all of this, or at least something that resembles something approaching to a convincing answer.
Chris Mason in Westminster, thank you. More than 100 people who've been trapped for 2 months beneath the rubble of a steelworks in eastern Ukraine have finally been brought to safety after they were rescued on Sunday. The evacuees have spent weeks without seeing daylight, living in tunnels beneath the steelworks in the besieged city of Mariupol. But the ceasefire that allowed them to escape was brief. Fierce fighting has begun again in Mariupol, and the Red Cross says there are still an unknown number of people trapped there. Our correspondent Laura Bicker watched as the first evacuees finally made it to safety in Zaporizhia this afternoon.
Their journey from hell is over. 2 months of horror ends in exhaustion and relief. Katarina spent weeks hidden in the depths of the Azovstal steel plant as Russian bombs pounded the site. She tried to tell her children that everything would be okay, even when she didn't believe it herself.
How we were living, to be honest, it was horrible. From morning until night we were bombarded. Artillery, rockets, airstrikes. Our children couldn't sleep. They were crying. They were scared, and us as well. There were several times when we were losing hope that we would never get out. We are extremely glad to be in Ukraine.
For more than 60 days, these women and children were stuck in the darkness, living on rations handed down by Ukrainian soldiers. It's been a difficult and complex operation to free them.
We lived in hope that every day would be the last day in this hell, that we would go home to a peaceful Mariupol, but now it is non-existent.
This evacuation represents rare progress to ease the humanitarian cost of this war.
Food and a little hope. Lives have been saved today, but many more hang in the balance. Laura Bicker, BBC News, Zaporizhzhia.
Boris Johnson has become the first foreign leader to address members of the Ukrainian parliament since the Russian invasion, describing the resistance to Moscow as Ukraine's finest hour. But speaking via video link from Downing Street, the Prime Minister acknowledged that the West had been too slow to act in 2014 when Russia invaded Crimea and too slow to introduce sanctions on President Putin. He said the same mistakes cannot be made again. Our Eastern Europe correspondent Sarah Rainsford reports from Bucha on the outskirts of the capital, Kyiv, much of which has been destroyed by the Russian attacks.
This is Ukraine's finest hour.
Boris Johnson's been to Kiev in person. Now came a virtual visit to Ukraine's parliament.
Ukraine will win.
There is genuine gratitude here for Britain's support, both military and moral. But there's criticism too, that had the West been tougher on Russia 8 years ago when it annexed Crimea, this devastating war might never have happened. And today, the Prime Minister acknowledged that.
And the truth is that we were too slow to grasp what was really happening. And we collectively failed to impose the sanctions then that we should have put on Vladimir Putin. And we cannot make the same mistake again.
But Ukraine is paying a huge price.
It's when you see all this that you realise just how fierce the fighting was around Ukraine's capital and just how close Russian troops came to Kyiv. And even though they've been forced back from here, this war, with all its destruction, is still far from over.
Even in Kyiv, life's still a long way from normal. But diplomats who were quick to evacuate are now trickling back.
We passed, bombed out playgrounds, bombed out schools, hospitals, burned out trees, twisted metal in farmland. So obvious, really, that right from the beginning, this was about hitting the Ukrainian nation.
Nowhere says that more clearly than Bucha, smashed and traumatised by a month under Russian occupation. Today we found a crowd queuing for handouts at the church. Many here have lost everything. Like Galina, who says a missile came through her roof and hit her bed. She was next door at the time, feeding the dog. I sang to get through, she tells me. Under fire, I ask, and she says it calmed her nerves and everyone around her. It takes time to trust the quiet again, that the Russian threat won't return, to a town that's now a crime scene, revealing stories of horror and their evidence. Sarah Rainsford, BBC News, Bucha.
Millions of women across the US could lose their legal right to abortion, according to a leaked document from the Supreme Court. A final decision is due by the summer. Abortion has been legal right across the United States for almost 50 years. But if that ruling is overturned, individual states would be free to set their own rules, meaning abortion could become illegal in more than 20 states. President Biden says he wants to protect the law guaranteeing abortion rights. Campaigners have already been protesting outside the court building in Washington, D.C., from where our North America editor Sarah Smith reports.
An almost instant reaction, with campaigners quickly gathering outside the Supreme Court, demonstrates America's deeply held views on abortion.
We will not go back.
From those who say they're mourning the death of fundamental women's rights, and those who believe lives will be saved if the Supreme Court reverses the constitutional right to abortion known as Roe versus Wade.
The reversal of Roe versus Wade is good and it will save lives.
They are not going to get away with this. Let me say that I don't care what I have to do, but they're not going to do this to D.C. and they are not going to do this to America. There's more of us than there is of them, and we are going to fight.
The physical confrontations, a sign of just how contentious this issue has been for over 50 years. President Biden said today he believes a woman's right to choose is fundamental and wants to pass a new law guaranteeing it.
It goes far beyond the concern of whether or not there is the right to choose. It goes to other basic rights, the right to marry, the right to determine a whole range of things.
9 justices sit on the Supreme Court. 5 of them, according to this leaked report, will vote to overturn abortion rights, with Justice Samuel Alito writing the decades-old decision to guarantee abortion was egregiously wrong. The official ruling, due in the coming weeks, will have a huge and sudden impact. There are 13 US states that have so-called trigger laws in place, which will lead to an immediate ban on abortion. Another 13 will move quickly to ban or severely limit access, says the Guttmacher Institute, a pro-choice group. It estimates 36 million women of reproductive age would live in states without abortion access.
The Supreme Court is poised to inflict the greatest restriction of rights in the past 50 years.
Republicans who pushed for a more conservative Supreme Court have welcomed the ruling, but condemned the leak.
One of the court's most essential and sacred features was smashed just to buy the outrage industrial complex a few extra days to scream nonsense about what the court might rule.
The passions ignited by this issue will not be silenced when the court delivers its official ruling.
Everyone knew that the Supreme Court was due to rule on abortion, but such a dramatic change in the law has still come as a seismic shock, one that will be felt throughout American politics. Sarah Smith, BBC News, Washington.
The time is just after 6:15. Our top story this evening. As BP announces underlying profits of £5 billion, the Prime Minister says there is more the government can do to help with the rising cost of living. And still to come, we're taking the pulse of the health service here in Northern Ireland ahead of Thursday's elections.
Coming up in Sports Day on the BBC News Channel, we'll be live from Villarreal as Liverpool's march to the Champions League final continues, as manager Jurgen Klopp insists they are ready to suffer.
On Thursday, millions of people across the UK will go to the polls for the local elections. But here in Northern Ireland, more so than anywhere else, the outcome could bring seismic change. For the first time in Northern Ireland's 100-year existence, a nationalist party, Sinn Féin, could become the largest party. And Sinn Féin's ultimate goal is for Northern Ireland to leave the UK and become one country with the Republic of Ireland. But whatever the result this week, there is still uncertainty about whether a power-sharing government will be formed afterwards because of tensions over Brexit and other issues. Our Ireland correspondent Emma Vardy reports.
I have got a message tonight for Sinn Féin. You'll never defeat the Protestant people of Ulster, ever!
The dominance of unionism through the decades is now in more jeopardy than ever before. The party opposed to Northern Ireland's existence may now define its future. But in the race for Stormont today, many voters have become tired of the old struggle between those who want to remain part of the UK and those who want a united Ireland.
I think we're stuck with green and orange tribalism. We can't continue with what we do because we're going to get exactly what we've always got.
Power sharing has been collapsed here for nearly as much time as it's been active. And the election result could lead to months more uncertainty.
We seem to like crisis politics here and do nothing apart from crisis politics. So even if Sinn Féin are the biggest party, the unionist parties, whatever, need to stand up and take the position and say, OK, well, let's just see what we can work with now.
The frustrations mean a growing number of people are voting for cross-community parties. But the top jobs will still be decided on whether a nationalist or unionist party wins the most seats.
They haven't gone away, you know.
Sinn Féin under Gerry Adams was known as the political wing of the paramilitary group the IRA. Now, under the leadership of Michelle O'Neill, the party is hoping to claim the First Minister's role.
It is a big, big thing still here.
On the Shankill Road, for unionism, a Sinn Féin victory would be a huge symbolic blow.
What would that mean in an area like this?
Devastation, to be honest, because they want a united Ireland, which most people don't want.
I wouldn't trust them as far as I get through them. Really wouldn't trust them as far as I get through them.
Why does that feeling still linger?
I don't know. It's just it boils down to my childhood and all too. So it does.
For some who lived through the conflict, the memories of paramilitary activity on both sides still shapes the political culture of Northern Ireland today.
If you come on one of the Troubles tours of Belfast, which is a big tourist attraction now, this is one of the places they'll bring you. And what it shows is that in some voters' minds, it's very difficult to move on from that connection between Sinn Féin and the violence of the past.
But just minutes away on the Falls Road, young Sinn Féin supporters see a very different picture.
Sinn Féin are actually putting out a positive message that young people want to hear. It feels like progress for someone like me. I was born in 1997, so obviously I'm post all the guns and explosions and everything, so I don't really know that kind of lifestyle. For me, it's always been this kind of spirit of cooperation and kind of working together.
The party's image, in some people's eyes, has certainly come a long way.
Their messaging reflects the price of gas to heat the house or the price of diesel.
And in this election, Sinn Féin has hardly mentioned a border poll, a referendum on whether Northern Ireland should leave the UK.
How important is that goal of a united Ireland?
I don't think it's any secret that Sinn Féin are in favour of a united Ireland. That's always part of their goal. But in the here and now, people need help in their day-to-day lives.
The Democratic Unionist Party has said a vote for them is the best way to safeguard the union, and that only they can stop Sinn Féin winning. But because the DUP walked out of the Stormont executive in a protest over the Brexit arrangements, no one will be First Minister here unless they return, no matter how decisive a result may be delivered. Emma Vardy, BBC News.
Health has also been a very big issue in the election campaign here. Northern Ireland has the longest hospital waiting lists in the UK, with many people having to wait more than 2 years for an operation. And Northern Ireland has the highest proportion of its population on waiting lists compared to any other part of the UK. Our Ireland correspondent Chris Page reports.
Hospitals in Northern Ireland can't get enough people through their doors quickly enough. Around 1 in 4 adults are waiting for an appointment or to begin treatment. More than half have been on a list for at least a year, but for thousands the wait is a lot longer. John, from County Tyrone, says he was told 6 years ago that he needed surgery to remove his gallbladder.
Well, every couple of months, I was always getting up in the morning, I was always being sick, bringing up the bile, and you were sick the whole day. Then you ended up going to the hospital, and then you were sitting in the hospital for several hours. And then they say it's your gallbladder. Well, I know it's my gallbladder.
How long have you been told you may have to wait for this?
That was back in 2020. They said I was 2.5 years down the list. What's that, 2.5 years? It must be up nearly now, and nothing's materialised.
Waiting times have become the worst in the UK for various reasons.
Over a number of years now, the devolved government has commissioned several reports about what's causing the problems in the health service. These have suggested that there are too many hospitals in Northern Ireland, given the size of the population, there should be more care in the community, and there's an urgent need to train and retain more staff.
Reforms have been slowed, even stalled, by political instability. There's another huge issue in healthcare here. Northern Ireland has a higher rate of mental illness and suicide than England, Scotland and Wales. This is a showing of a film remembering Carl Mooney, who took his own life. 3 of his school friends made it to help raise awareness.
So there was 2 main reasons. The first one was definitely to pay tribute to Carl's memory, and the second reason was just to let people in the younger generation know that it's okay to speak.
It's absolutely vital. Mental health, it's especially for me, just what I've been through with Carl, the passing and everything, just it needs to be at the top of the list.
I feel like people are prioritising, physical health. It is a priority, obviously, but I feel like mental health should fall under the same level of priority.
Soon, voters will elect politicians to set priorities in the Stormont Assembly. Fixing the health service may present the most challenging choices. Chris Page, BBC News, Belfast.
Well, our Ireland correspondent Emma Vardy is with me here in Belfast. A big day here on Thursday. How could this pan out after the elections?
Well, the short answer is we could be at Stormont anyway, in almost exactly the same scenario that we're in now. So even if there is this historic result that's been indicated by the polls, well, the power sharing rules mean that the First Minister, Deputy First Minister roles are joint roles. They are equal. You cannot have one without the other. And the DUP has made it pretty clear that they're not going to be going back into the executive unless their demands around getting changes to the Brexit arrangements are met. And if there is a Sinn Féin victory, there's probably going to be even less enthusiasm in the DUP for going back in. So the most likely picture is that we'll have this period of negotiation between the parties that could be quite drawn out. In the meantime, government will limp along, but without being able to take any of the really big decisions. If there's no agreement after 6 months, then we could be heading for a whole fresh set of elections, Sophie. But look, public patience with this kind of politics is wearing pretty thin. Something we've seen in the past here is that long drawn out periods without a government can lead to the big parties getting punished at the ballot box.
Emma Vardy, thank you. So Billy Connolly is to be given this year's BAFTA Fellowship in honour of a career spanning more than 5 decades. The comedian and actor, who is 79, will receive the honour at the BAFTA Television Awards on Sunday. Sir Billy was diagnosed with Parkinson's in 2013. He retired from live performances 5 years later, but has continued to record programmes and make TV appearances. P&O ferries have restarted cross-channel sailings for tourists for the first time since sacking nearly 800 workers. The Spirit of Britain left Dover for Calais this afternoon. It comes after the company resumed freight-only sailings on the key route between the UK and France last week. But a second ferry, Pride of Kent, has failed a safety inspection for the third time. Football now, and Liverpool take on the Spanish side Villarreal this evening, which could see them reach the final of the Champions League. Our sports correspondent Natalie Perks joins us now from Villarreal in eastern Spain. Natalie.
Well, we're getting ready to suffer, just as Jurgen Klopp said Liverpool will tonight, with this very distinctly English weather. But Villarreal are the surprise package in this year's tournament. They are the second smallest side in the competition's history, with a population smaller than Clacton-on-Sea. But they've been very much punching above their weight. Unai Emery, the former Arsenal boss, is their manager. They've been Juve and Bayern Munich en route to these semis, but with a wage bill more than four times smaller than Liverpool. They really didn't lay a glove on them at Anfield last week. Just one shot to Liverpool's 19. Here at home, though, might be different. Very tight ground, as you can see, and vociferous support. Liverpool, though, are firing on all cylinders in their quest for that historic quadruple. They're aiming to become the first side to become champions of England, conquer Europe and win the FA Cup and the League Cup. Liverpool have already played 56 matches this season, but speed is one of the hallmarks of their game, and I don't expect that to change anytime soon.
Natalie, thank you. Let's have a look at the weather now with Ben Rich. What's it looking like, Ben?
Well, Sophie, there's been a lot of cloud around today in Northern Ireland and elsewhere. This was the scene for a weather watcher in County Down. But where that cloud did break to reveal some sunshine, well, we saw some big, heavy showers. And tomorrow, more of us should see sunshine. At the same time, more of us should see those heavy showers. Now, through this evening and tonight, we keep a lot of cloud. It'll be quite misty and murky in places. We'll see some outbreaks of rain pushing eastwards. Temperatures won't fall too far. It is going to stay mild underneath that cloud, 7 to 11 degrees. So tomorrow morning, we will start off with largely cloudy conditions, perhaps a bit more in the way of wet weather than we had, say, this morning. The rain will push eastwards. We'll see something brighter developing from the west, but as the sun comes out, well, the showers will start to develop, especially through the afternoon across parts of eastern Scotland, northern and eastern England into the Midlands. Some of these showers heavy, some of them thundery. There will be some dry gaps in between, and as always with showers, some places will get a real drenching. Others will avoid them and stay pretty much dry. But with that extra brightness, it will be slightly warmer tomorrow. Temperatures between 14 and 17 degrees. Now, as we move into Thursday, we see high pressure building to the south. Frontal systems up to the northwest, so that's where we have the chance for some outbreaks of rain. But this is a weather setup that will deliver us plus southwesterly winds and some warm air. So temperatures will climb on Thursday, particularly across England and Wales, where we'll see some spells of sunshine, more cloud and some splashes of rain for Northern Ireland and for Scotland. The highest temperatures down towards the south, 21, maybe up to 22 degrees. Friday will again be warm in the south, bit of rain further north and west though, and then the weekend looks mainly fine and dry. There'll be some sunshine and temperatures up to 21 degrees. Sophie.
How very nice. Thank you very much. Well, that's all from the BBC News at 6. It's goodbye from me here in Belfast. And on BBC One, we now join the BBC's news teams where you are. Goodbye.